Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for dialing in today for our webinar. My name is Mo Sayed. I'm an immigration attorney with Offit Kurman, and I am delighted to have with me LaDonna Ogden, who is a leader in the. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us, LaDonna.
Oh, my pleasure, Mo. Thank you for having me.
Yes. So just housekeeping, we have on this GoToWebinar portal, we will have there's a chat box where those of you who would like to ask some questions can ask questions there. Also, the recording of this webinar will be available. It will be sent out to the folks who have registered, and certainly we ask that you circulate it with others that you may know who are interested in the subject matter. All right, so the focus today is for us to talk to a business leader like LaDonna about how businesses are adjusting to the new normal that we have as a result of the COVID pandemic. LaDonna and I have known each other for a while. We've worked together on some immigration matters, but she wears many hats and she has experience in a wide range of business issues. So we will explore some of those with her in our talk today. So as by way of a quick intro, LaDonna is the Director of HR and Operations at Beeline Medical. She joined in 2019. Prior to Beeline, she was a talent and acquisition and HR manager for the North America region of an IT company. She received her Bachelor's of Science in Business Administration from Shorter University and her Master's in Science in Human Resources from Southern New Hampshire University. And I know she has certifications in HR, and her full bio can be accessed in the flyer. With that, let me, just ask LaDonna to share some thoughts, just a general introduction about LaDonna. What is it that Beeline Medical does? What is your role within that organization, so that our audience can get to know you a little bit more?
Sure, my pleasure, Mo. Glad to go ahead and speak about myself as well as my company. So just so you know that, as Mo stated, I'm the Director of HR and Operations at Beeline Medical. I report directly to Shafiq, who is Kazoon, who is actually the CEO. He's also the co-founder of the company. So Beeline Medical actually was founded in 2005. It's very fitting to talk about Beeline because we're software in the healthcare industry. So basically what we do is we provide software to healthcare professionals and as well as educators to go ahead and improve delivery of healthcare. So what does that mean? That means basically what we do is we help practitioners get better at what they do. As you know, there's always better ways of improvements of doing procedures, different clinical events when people come in to the hospital, not just for people who are newly going in to be doctors and physicians and nurses, but also people who are currently working in that field. So with our software, they can go ahead and record clinical events that they do in training. They then can go ahead and annotate things. They can go ahead and see the trends and forecasts and go ahead and debrief on that and then make improvements. So for an example, they may have mannequins they're working on, or they may have actors or actresses that are acting out different medical events. And these young doctors or even experienced professionals go through the motions of someone being ill or an injury. And our software is what's used to go ahead and record those events, and then they can go ahead and review that. So very exciting work that we do. We were actually acquired by Laredo, is our parent company out of Norway last year. And they actually are simulation, healthcare simulation and training. They make the mannequins. and they also have a resuscitation group as well, EMT. So it was really a good acquisition because we all are in the healthcare, screen of training, and our whole mission is to save lives, to reduce medical errors and save lives. So me as heading up, being the director, I oversee the DC office. So I wear the generalist hat and do everything from recruiting to benefits to compensation, employee relations, you name it. A team of two. I have a great associate, Candida Bustillo, who assists me. So that's what we do. We try to keep up and give the employees the best experience as possible while making sure the company stays within the parameters of legalities.
Wow, that's very interesting, LaDonna, and especially as I hear you describe the healthcare component. I feel that even before this pandemic, that field, especially with the rapidly evolving technologies, at least from what I've, learned about your company, it always struck me as a very cutting edge model of being able to train these healthcare providers using the modern technology, and especially right now, like we're experiencing in how this era of social distancing and our use of Zoom and other technologies to just continue to function professionally in this remote environment. And I can imagine the great contribution that Beeline and your team is providing in today's environment.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, Mo, because we actually did do some things because of COVID-19. So our parent company, as I mentioned, Laerdal, they went ahead and actually turned the manufacturing facilities over to make respirators. So instead of making the mannequins, they started making respirators. And then for us, we actually gave away like 90-day free trials to anybody who wanted in regards to scenarios in reference to COVID-19. Say you get a patient that comes in and has, those symptoms and has diabetes or this or that, what do you do? So we actually came up with scenarios, and we're giving that away free, our software, to people in regards to our SIM capture, which is our product, so that they can go ahead and get that training and hopefully help with this current pandemic.
Okay, wow, that's great. Well, so that leads me to a question. Could you give us a sense of, you mentioned that this resources were, refocused producing masks. How are your clients responding in terms of their needs? Like, and I think, I guess as a threshold, I'd be curious to know, or the audience might be interested to know, what is your client base, and how is it spread domestically and internationally? And are you seeing any trends across the different client segments?
Yeah, so basically anything where there's training, so university hospitals, and most of I'm in the DC, we're in the DC region here, but for the hospitals like GW and Howard and things like that, all the large hospitals, university hospitals that have the medical facilities, they typically utilize our software. Over 500 hospitals and healthcare facilities, and in 35 countries, they utilize our software. So it's a lot of people that utilize that. And so what we're seeing right now is a lot of their efforts, of course, with schools and stuff, things have been put on hold, but there is a demand for our software and also for our company, our parent company, mannequins and stuff. But since we haven't been able to really travel, because our employees are, of course, our utmost concern, their safety and well-being. Yeah. So we actually halted traveling, but we've been doing some remote work to help them. So virtually helping them with that. But they have, in a sense, too, kind of slowed and shut down, too, because of just being you're right there in a hospital, university hospital. So of course they're taking protective measures as well as us. So right now it has been a trend of going down where we had halted. But after June 5th, 1st, we're actually starting to travel again, and because it's a demand. Our people are going to be traveling probably
Yeah.
8 weeks straight. That's how much of a demand it is
Yeah.
because we want to go ahead and get people trained up and doing a better job as soon as possible, because what's that going to do? That's going to save lives.
Absolutely. Tell me a little bit about, I mean, I know you spoke about your role within the organization. How do you find it, or what parts of that role have changed, or you know, in terms of what you're dealing with on a day-to-day?
hmm Yeah, 100%, Mo. It's definitely
Mhm.
changed. I will say the transition for my company to going remote was not difficult because, first of all, we're very tech. Our
Yeah,
co-owners are tech as well. So we were already
yeah.
all working from home every Friday. So us
Okay.
transitioning to it being permanent wasn't that difficult. However,
Mhm.
that being said, it still has been with trying to keep that collaborative and just the bond and just how agile we are. That has definitely been more of a challenge. I know for me, not having, because I have paper files, not having access to all my paper files and sometimes having to sneak into DC, that
Yeah,
definitely has been a challenge. And it was coming with immigration stuff. I mean, because
yeah,
with the posting notices and things like that,
yeah, yeah.
we had to find ways to go ahead and get that posted on our intranet site and just trying to change things around. So it
Mm,
definitely has made an impact to the office. Like I said,
mm,
our client services and salespeople cease traveling
mm,
altogether. So what I've been doing, what my team has been doing, is focusing on them cross training, focusing on the employees with getting certifications that maybe they wanted to get as well, focusing on going ahead and actually having them doing procedure books, things that fell to the wayside, when you're so
mm,
busy. That's what we've kind of
mm,
switched our gears. And with management, thinking of ways
mm,
that we can go ahead and do things more efficiently in the office. Now's the time to go ahead and look at, okay, look at the things on wish list. Look at the things that we had on our list that can bring us revenue. What's going to go ahead and put us right side quicker? So doing a lot of brainstorming on our executive team of like what we can cut costs on, and also what is it that can go ahead and increase revenue and just efficiency of current processes that we have while we have, this lull in the traditional business. That way we can come out strong on the other end. So we've been taking the time to
right.
definitely make sure that our people are getting like different materials and resources and doing what they need to so that they can actually be better, armed when we come out of this.
Sure. That's so interesting, LaDonna. I mean, and I'll just talk to like add on to what you're saying. I feel that we have at similar teams within our organization. So as a a good sized law firm of more than 200 attorneys spread out across
Mm-hmm.
different offices, the response that I've seen from our management is very impressive in terms of helping create the um, processes that allow us all to function where we're not being able to see each other face to face. And
Mm-hmm.
also just going back to the basics, like how do we provide a robust um, mechanism to deliver services to our clients? Um,
Right.
you mentioned about the immigration piece. Um, you know, the immigration laws are written in a very traditional environment where a lot of postings are done in paper at physical locations, and
Mm-hmm.
we have seen um, the government showing flexibility. And however, there are areas in terms of um, like if you're hiring somebody on an H-1B and there's a need to post a paper notice at the office where the idea is that it's seen by other employees, um, that paper notice now in the remote working environment isn't very effective because there's no one at the office.
Exactly.
So, we have seen some flexibility from the government, but in other areas, we're permitted electronic notices. But some of the rules have still not been adjusted for the COVID-19 situation. And so we find it then advising our clients then to be creative in terms of, satisfying the intent behind the regulations. So that, itself presents some challenging situations.
Right.
All right. Yeah.
And just to add on to that, something else I've been very busy with is webinars trying to keep up with the ever-changing laws and regulations that have been coming down. So basically for the, Families First Coronavirus Response Act and that implementation, and also the CARES Act. So because there's different stipulations that benefit the employees and trying to keep them well informed and up to date. Knowing that, letting them know that, hey, the company is here for you. Come to us if you have a situation or a family member has a situation, and letting them know that, there's pluses for them right now. There's been benefit plan changes as well in regards to now with the coverage of the testing. That was something that may or may not have been covered by plans, but it being required. And also for them that if they do get sick or family member gets sick, there's leave for them, paid leave for that, and they don't have to worry about losing their job. So things like that, more on the immigration side, it's just like for people we have in the process, they're just like, what's my status? What's happening? Scenarios, what happens if we have to do a layoff or if there's pay cuts or furloughs? Unrest about traveling, about getting in and out of the country and things like that. So, and especially with a lot of field offices closed, like in-person office, field office being suspended for the USCIS, premium processing suspension, policy changes. So it's just been a lot of questions, and you've been great, of course, about helping us navigate those.
Oh, thank you for that kind remark. You're right in terms of, for me within immigration, even, a lot of what I'm doing is having to stay on top of the changing regulations, executive orders, and really situations that have arisen for the first time with the pandemic. Just to give you an example, I have one client that at one point had, I think, almost like 14 employees on non-immigrant visas. And when the lockdown started, some of them were overseas and they couldn't come back into the U.S. So then we had to look at how, suddenly this employer, from having a purely domestic U.S. workforce, now they have a workforce that's remote and not, in other countries.
Right.
How does that relate to their visas? What steps does the employer need to take now in case they have to comply with foreign country requirements? And for some of them, it was actually better because, especially for example, the H-1B workers, time that they're overseas doesn't count against their overall time limits on H-1B being inside the U.S. So they're actually, if they can, for example, like it sounds like with Beeline Medical, you have already a very, at least for some employees, the remote working situation is doable. And so then it doesn't matter whether it's remote, from home in the U.S. or if it's remote from a foreign country, if the time zone is not an issue. So, bottom line, for some employees, it actually helped. Others that are in the U.S. and let's say had to be furloughed or reductions in their hours, um, those can be problematic. With the H-1B regulations, there's very specific commitments by the employer to have a certain number of hours, have even they're tied to a certain location. Um, so we did have some flexibility on the location from the USCIS, where because of the temporary disruption, there were not additional requirements to file an amended petition within certain parameters. If they're not working from office but working from home, that's within the same location.
Okay.
But in other situations, there is a need to file an amendment if you're going to significantly reduce their hours, and furloughs and layoffs obviously lead to termination of their status. So then they have to leave the country and figure out something. So yeah, tough situations to deal with.
Yeah, that's interesting you stated that, because I know, like, I definitely have friends who have been impacted at their different companies. I have one company, girlfriend, where her paycheck, was cut, where they cut all the paychecks, and I have another friend where she was furloughed. And so in thinking of the immigration, because as I've been telling you, I've been on a lot of webinars myself, included trying to keep on top of all these changes. How does that work, Mo, when it comes to, like, with, pay cuts? I know with furloughs and layoffs, typically they have to leave the country, but what about in regards to pay cuts?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's important, right, to understand this fully because on some visa categories there is flexibility, and in others there's not. So, for example, when you have let's take the typical H-1B scenario. The number one thing that the employer has to demonstrate is that for approval is to demonstrate that according to the Department of Labor data, the wage that's being paid is the prevailing wage for this type of position in the particular geographic area, right? So that's a certification that's filed with the approval and with the condition that if anything changes, then the government has to be notified. So practically how this will work is that, if the employer reduces the hourly rate, and if it goes below the prevailing wage, you have different situations in terms of if it's actually going below the prevailing wage or it's going below what the prior salary was. There are requirements to file an amended petition, perhaps if you keep the same hourly rate, you can reduce the hours, and make it a part-time position and file an amended petition. That's okay. But if we're going below the prevailing wage and working the same hours, then the person becomes out of status, and the employer is then in violation of their commitment. So that could have consequences for later petitions. Let's say, for example, if the company goes for renewal of this person like a year later, the government will ask for proof of their prior payroll records, and then they may discover that, oh, well, for a period of time they weren't being paid, what the commitment was. Now, because of the pandemic and the need to keep the economy moving, it's early to say whether we'll see some concessions that we may see some. I mean, nothing's been announced yet in this regard. Like on the H-1Bs, they're very strict. They said, okay, if you are doing a reduction, then that's termination of status. Like if you're lowering the wage below the prevailing wage. So on H's, it's problematic. I don't recommend. Other visa types that are flexible. So for Canadians and Mexicans that are professional workers that are on a specific list of types of professions, um, um, they have flexibility. Like they're not required to really be um, being paid prevailing wage. They have a job offer and they have the degree. So on the TNs, there is flexibility to reduce their wages. That's the TN visa is for those types of workers. So there is some flexibility. The F1 OPT workers, they are also flexible on these are the folks that have recently graduated and they have a 1-year work authorization or a 3-year work authorization. So wages and hours for them are not as rigid. And then lastly, folks that have green cards, certainly they're at par with U.S. citizens when it comes to requirements in terms of they can be treated as other U.S. workers are treated. So there's not really any specified obligation. So as long as it's the state and federal laws apply that apply generally to wages would apply to them, and so for them employers would have flexibility.
That's great information. Yeah, because we have a couple people in those different categories, so that's great information.
Yeah, and some of the another issue related to that is folks that are because they can't travel due to the lockdown. Some folks are overstaying their status in the U.S. Or they have to go with, or there may be some that have approved age petitions or other non-immigrant employment visas, but they can't get these visas issued because the embassies are closed. So that's something that we're following. There were some. There's an executive order that said that for healthcare workers, there's going to be exception from the travel ban recently, and there are mechanisms for them to get visas issued, even though generally embassies are closed. But from a practical standpoint, I've really not seen anything positive in that area, unfortunately.
Okay. Excellent.
Yeah, sure. So let me, LaDonna, I'm gonna switch gears a little bit. I mean, we've talked some about immigration. Let me ask, in terms of other areas of the law, or just general like legal questions, like what have some issues been that have like been brought to the forefront by the current situation?
I think a lot of the employees' concern is really about the well-being of the company and how we've been doing financially. Because, of course, everyone wants to keep their job. They don't want to have their pay cut, but if that occurs, they'd rather have that happen than, of course, losing their job altogether. And then questions in regards to, what can they do to help out? We actually went ahead and did a survey. So we actually did a survey with about 20 questions just in regards to COVID-19. Like, what do you want to see from leadership? Do you have tools and resources, the necessary tools and resources to work from home? What's your greatest concern at this point? It went over different concerns that they might have, as well as some open-ended questions just where they could specify things about, like, what if they get sick? Will their job be protected and things like that? And with the government going ahead and expanding the FMLA, where now it's just 30 days, and actually then the employee has that protection, and also with being paid for sick time, so they don't even have to go into their PTO or their vacation time or sick time. They can actually utilize this first before fully utilizing their other time. It's been very encouraging for them. Also to know that, that if they were to go to the hospital, now the benefit plan covers it. If they're on the HSA plan, it's expanded now to where you can actually get more, purchase more things that were considered not really under the parameters of an HSA account, but things that can help you in regards to over-the-counter things. It's expanded that. As well as we changed because they want to know, well, what happens if, my spouse or a significant other loses their job. And we had some employees where that did happen. And it was great to be able to say, hey, we can put them on our health plan. If you need a hardship loan now because of the CARES Act, it makes it easier for them to go ahead and get a loan or a hardship withdrawal in regards to helping them financially. So also with the EAP program, some people have had concerns with being isolated. There's, single, or they, battle with depression already, and the fact of having to stay home and not having that day-to-day interaction in the office was overwhelming for them. So thankfully, we have a great, employee assistance program, and so that's something that I've been very highlighting greatly in regards to that, hey, just not in regards to just talking to someone, but they can get financial help too. So, if you hit those hard times, they can help you out with that as well, having some free sessions. So that's really been helpful. And also telling people that when we do reopen the office, it won't be mandatory. That if they have concerns, because all of our employees, again, can work remotely 100%. So there's no reason they should rush back to the office. And I was actually talking to our employment attorney, and she was stating that basically you can't require them to come back to the office if the health organizations are still saying there's risk for infection. So even if the ban orders are lifted and things like that, you still can't go ahead and actually require people to come into the office. So that's the really nice thing about that. So that's been really great. So It's been just really giving, people what they need and helping them out in all areas of their life, not just some, but all of that. And I apologize, someone's trying to call me through work Slack, so it'll go away in a second.
Oh, I think we all know how that goes. I've been lucky right now that it's not been ringing here.
I'm very much in demand these days, Mo, so.
Yes. Oh, and we are grateful to have you with us. So, and in fact, well, my next question was related to being in demand. So to me, it seems that the HR professionals right now are really playing a critical role and being put under a lot of pressure, I guess, for addressing these very real problems that, like you said, like the safety of your employees. I mean, those things are very urgent, pressing, right? You can't answer the question tomorrow, like it has to be answered today. So two questions. One is, and I think this would be kind of directed at other HR professionals. Like, I mean, where do you get your knowledge and expertise from, and how do you keep it up to date? I mean, are there specific groups that you're part of? Are there, webinars in particular, or, how does that work out? Like, is there something industry specific, or, so talk a little bit about that. I'm always curious.
Right. Yeah. So number one is definitely being a SHRM member. Society of Human Resources Management. That is so essential, and it's such a lifesaver. I mean, because first of all, they have a whole COVID-19 resource center. So they're constantly doing webinars, updates. I have all the alerts and notifications active. And, of course, I get a lot of emails. So I have it where it'll go into inbox. I have a special SHRM notification inbox, so that it doesn't clutter up from seeing like employee or client emails, and it goes in there, and that's what I review every day. I review those notifications, read those articles, also HR Dive. That's another very like essential packed with information, organization that provides me a lot of good, insightful information. Also from our benefits carrier. So we actually have Kelly as our benefits carrier, and so they have been having ongoing webinars in regards to just health plan changes and everything that affects the benefits. So that's been nice because I've been able to go ahead and capture that. Also, I get alerts from the attorneys as well. So getting the alerts from attorneys saying, hey, make sure you post this, like the FSCRA post was supposed to be posted by the 1st. And so all of those things really help me a lot, but you have to do more than just go ahead and read those. I go ahead and register for the webinars. I'm also a member of DC SHRM. So so basically the other day they had a half day law session. And so I went ahead, it was from 1 to 4 o'clock. It was on the new DC paid leave that's coming out. There's all, new things that's starting July 1st. But also they had a very interesting section on handbooks and about, updating, which was very fitting for right now, because a lot of things are changing. And what I was very happy to hear, because I've been working on a COVID-19 employee guidebook. So this is separate from the handbook I have. And this book is I feel like it's going to be the Bible for the employees, because it talks about remote work, what we expect, our expectations for remote work. It also talks about when we reopen the office. I went in detail how about the office is going to be sanitized in that process before we open it. Also, I put in there about social distancing that will require, the screening procedures. We will be taking temperatures. The EEOC now is making that allowable for you to screen your employees in regards to that, because, you have diehard people who just do not want to stay home, even if they're feeling sick. So talking about those procedures as well, protocol for when you have customers come in or vendors, the no touch contact. So, having people and dropping how we're going to do that as well. Also in regards to our office, because we're open concept, we're the hip tech company. And so we had the open concept, but that's just not good for the pandemic. So what we're going to do in regards to that, whether we're going to have plexiglass dividers like you see in the stores as well, markings on the floor to direct traffic, not having people congregate in the kitchen anymore. So really taking a look at that. All that is described in the handbook. Also what I have in there is the new legislation. So for the, FSCRA, the CARES Act, I have that spelled out as well. So it's a really nice, one-stop guidebook on everything to survive the pandemic and what you need to know as an employee. I've created that for the employees, because the handbook, which was nice to hear from the actual attorney, she said you really should hold on actually updating your handbooks at this time, because it's changing by the minute. So before you update your handbook, she said it's really better to have a separate book. And so that's what I have created for the employees. Of course, they can come to me, but I have a lot of astute and very analytical employees who love to go ahead and see it in writing and read it themselves. So I've created that for them.
Gotcha. Well, that's pretty thorough, sounds like, and it's very valuable information that I appreciate you sharing that with our participants.
Sure.
So I have a few questions here. I also do encourage the attendees to ask questions with the chat box. Okay, let me switch to my field a little bit, and I'll ask it like at a very high level.
Sure.
So, what I enjoy about what I do is helping my clients to recruit the talent that is valuable to them. To recruit and keep foreign nationals that are graduating from U.S. universities, that are, high degree professionals, and have gone through a competitive recruiting process where the employer has determined that this person is, good for them. And typically, I feel that the way some of this is designed is that the students graduating, coming off of student visas, are given a period of practical training during which the employer can assess their performance and see if it's a good fit, and then make offers to keep them on a H-1B. And then in the long term, if they really like them, then keep them on a green card, because the H-1B after 6 years, it runs out and they have to find another permanent solution. Okay, so that's like the business side, the employment contract side. What I'm curious about is how you view the current system, and this can be like even pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. Do you feel that the laws and regulations and even the process, like just dealing with the attorneys, um, does it help you? Does it hurt you? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So when I'm looking for anybody to work with, so this is not just, attorney and Candy is probably watching this and laughing. I want someone that is on their toes, that knows the answer, and also knows to reach out to me to alert me of things, high-level things that need to be done, which could, my company could receive a penalty or a fine or something that's, breaking a law or regulation. I want to know about that. I want that to be highlighted. I'm definitely a perfectionist. I want the fluff taken out and a clear message of what we need to do. I'm not the expert. You're the expert. And so I rely heavily on people that are experts in their fields to guide me. And I can say, Mo, that you have been great at doing that. And that's what's critical in this time, because before things hadn't, have been the same for a while. So I had gotten used to the process or what needs to be done at, what time, because we had done that. But things have changed and no one can keep up with everything. And so it just helps to have someone that specializes in what they do, that can go ahead, break it down to you in terms that you can understand, and go ahead and help you through the process and making the best decisions possible, not just looking out for just, the individual or the fact of, oh, we're paying you a fee, but what's best for our situation in the company, someone that you can trust. And so that's what's important to me, is someone that I can rely on, that is an expertise that stays up with current trends, and that you can trust to guide you. That's what's very important.
Gotcha, sure. And I think that there's a joint stake in the outcome and the success of the petition, as well as watching out for the risk areas. And so I definitely view my job as someone. There's always a tendency to want to get the client objectives, accomplished as quickly and efficiently as possible. And then at the same time, if we're in a situation which is risky, then I always feel that it's the full disclosure of the risks, and then deciding together a course of action. And so it is sometimes in the sense of like current times, there are very close calls, and it's become challenging. But yeah, just kind of like what you said in terms of the HR world and SHRM, we have to, as immigration attorneys, there's a ton of webinars internally, and like a whole organization like the American Immigration Lawyers Association, where there are thousands of practitioners that are sharing information on cutting edge issues daily. And so that helps us a lot to be able to provide that level of service that so that we're hearing about the experiences of other companies and individuals all over the world, and so using that knowledge to advise our clients on the best practices. And our law firm has a pretty active COVID-19 web page, and we're also pushing out immigration-related content on there. And so yes, it's so much about finding the right information at the right time. So thank you for that comment.
Yeah, that's good to know. I didn't know your website had that, so that's good to know that. That's good information.
Yeah, and within immigration there are then subspecialties. So for example, the employer. So and then with that there are then subgroups of the Immigration Lawyers Association. So there are folks that then specialize in deportations, folks that specialize in dealing with the embassies.
Okay.
So because a lot of times I'm sure you have this too, like where you have employees that have significant others that are also interested in working, or they have their own situations where they're getting something processed by marriage, and those are all different areas with their own challenges right now. Because the one thing you mentioned about early on is the in-person visits not happening for some of these cases. The in-person visits usually, one of the most common type of such visit is where the government wants to take your fingerprints and take your photo to do some background checking and create an employment authorization card. So right now, those services are not happening, so people are delayed. Another situation is where there's an interview required, typically for family-based petitions or employment-based petitions. For green cards, they're used to take interviews, and so those are backed up right now. And then certainly the embassies being shut down creates a difficult situation. And there are people, you have folks that are tied to, like, let's say they can't stay outside the U.S. for more than 6 months because their green card's gonna be put in danger, and some countries are not allowing any flights out, so there are people stuck. So there's all kinds of stuff happening, and lots of things to keep your eye on, because all the questions I get are they're scattered all across these areas.
Right. Well, something that Mo, I was thinking about is sometimes with the C-level executives and stuff, you try for them to see the value in doing a green card. What is your recommendation if someone's on an H-1B, how soon to do the green card, quickly to do that, and how to sell that?
So okay, let me just see if I understand the question properly. So I think what I heard you say is, if you have an employee on an H-1B, then in terms of the decision to do a green card, what are some helpful things towards making that decision, and then how to actually do the green card process?
Yeah, because I know sometimes people do not start it until a year, or some people start it immediately. I've had this talk with other HR colleagues about this.
Sure. Okay, so I'm gonna. So there's a few things. One is obviously the level of confidence in each other. So for an employee that's performing well, and an employer having a need for them, kind of seeing the need for them in the organization in the long term. I think those are the overall business decisions. If they're on a H-1B, they are allowed 6 years on the H-1B, so an employer can potentially wait, you know, a couple of years before they start the process of their green card. Some countries, for example, India and China, their green card processing takes so long. I mean, it's not that the processing takes so long, it's that because there's so many applicants from those countries and there's a limited amount per country that the US government issues per year. So they often have wait times of, you know, 5, 10, 12 years of waiting on their green cards. So in those situations, the employee will be very keen to get it started quick, or they're going to look for another employer that's, you know, committing to do it for them. So often that's a consideration, that it's something that the employee will want, like in terms of, you know, the security of like having a life in the U.S. and building a career in the U.S. Other times the environment, like because, you know, the employer, unlike the H, so in the H, the employer doesn't have to show that they've looked for other U.S. workers. You know, they just have to show that they're paying what they would pay a U.S. worker. They don't have to go out and look for other, you know. In a green card, the employer has to make a good faith effort at recruiting a U.S. national. And then being able to demonstrate that they haven't found one, and so they're offering the job to this individual. Now, in some cases, like for example, perhaps in current times, their unemployment rate is very high. So it might be difficult for employers to, you know, actually show that they've not found a qualified U.S. worker. So in that situation, it might make sense to wait for the economy to get back to normal. You know, a couple of other things that come to mind. The processing for, you know, if you have family members involved, you know, sometimes like an H, so right now, H dependents, like a wife or a husband of an H-1B holder, does not get a work authorization. So often it's very helpful that the employer petition for a permanent residence, because then while that petition is pending, they will get a work authorization for the spouse. So that makes it easier for them to stay here, because then, you know, they can have two incomes. A last thought that I had was for I mean, the good thing for the green card application is that once it's been filed, as long as it stays pending, the employer can keep extending the H. So that's of a lot of value in some situations. So, you know, like I said, for the Indian and Chinese, their green cards can stay pending for, you know, a decade. The nice thing is that once it's been filed and some conditions have been met, their H-1B can keep getting extended until the green card processes. So, you know, so you can keep someone here who otherwise would have to leave.
Okay. Yep.
And yeah. So, so hopefully, you know, and then after that, the regular wage requirements don't apply. I mean, you know, the prevailing wage. Like, so once they get the green card, I mean, yes, you have to not sort of violate the representations made to the U.S. government, but after a while, if, you know, if they move to a different position, then they can be treated just like a U.S. worker would be. Like, they're not necessarily, you know, there's no obligation towards the government that would exist with an H.
I see.
Yeah. Thank you for that question. So I think we're coming close to the end. I'm trying to think if the audience has any questions. They can certainly email me or put them in the chat box.
Sure.
So I want to ask you, LaDonna, if you have any, any concluding thoughts, anything you want to throw out there to share with our audience? Anything that would inspire them in these difficult times?
Yeah, these are difficult times. So what we try to do at Beeline is still have fun. And what we do is, some of the funner things that we do is we have an ongoing everyday coffee chat room on Zoom where people can have their morning cup of coffee or tea and go ahead and talk about what's going on, in their lives with their kids or outside with the neighbors or things like that. We have the virtual lunch hours. We also have virtual games. It's Jackbox is very popular. Typically the younger crowd knows about that. But we have the virtual games where you can go ahead and play on teams and things like that, and just have fun. And it's been really well received. I think you want to make sure that your people are okay and be as transparent as possible as well. We have a weekly town hall meeting where we just gather everyone together virtually and just go over what's, new in our industry, what's happened for the week, and anybody can chime in if they have something to say. But just go ahead and make sure that you're still keeping that pulse on your people that like with us doing a survey. You want to make sure you're meeting their needs and that they're getting through this okay. Because again, people are our most valuable resource, so we have to take care of them. And we appreciate you, Mo, and the rest of the attorneys who support us in doing that. But that's what, I would say at the end of the day is, have fun and communicate often. And we're going to make it through this.
Yes, thank you. That's really a good message to conclude on. LaDonna, really, I want to thank you for myself and my team here at Offit Kurman. Really enjoyed this.
My pleasure. I did as well. Thank you so much, Mo.
Absolutely, and we'll be in touch. And for the audience, I want to ask you if you have any suggestions, any feedback on today's webinar for our format today. We try to make it more interactive and interesting to the audience rather than a one-sided legal kind of presentation.
Sure.
And LaDonna, if you or anyone in the audience has ideas or suggestions for other persons we can bring to this webinar, we're doing these once a week, and I hope all of you will stay tuned for our next 2 webinars. Next week, I'll be talking to Amy Howe, who is the managing director with a architectural firm in New York, and then we'll have that information sent out with the.
That would be interesting.
Yeah,
to hear how it's going. Mm-hmm.
Yes, definitely. Okay, well, everybody be safe, and LaDonna, thank you. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll be in touch soon.
Okay, take care, everyone.
Thanks.